Development Agency, as well as COSATU. So I think these are the two items in our agenda. Am I correct, King?
Yes, Chairperson, you are correct.
Okay, can now start with the meeting. Honorable members and our guests and our officials, warmly greetings to this August month of brave women who deliberated as women during 1956 March. It's a good month, which we are having high expectations even from government to consider us as valuable creatures of God. And as women, we are expecting high that all our women in our rural areas during this month, they will enjoy the benefits of their human being as women. So I'm highly excited today as a chairperson who's also a woman to have our two agencies which are going to, our agency and our union, which are going to present documents before us, which according to me will attest to the liberation of those women in our country. The issue of inequality is a big problem. Women have been suffering, I think, for decades. It's high time now to be liberated. This month, we are requesting our counterparts to respect us, as to love us, and also to protect us. At the same time, we are inviting all organs of life to support women, more especially vulnerable women in our countries, because this COVID-19 has disrupted us, has disrupted our government, but we still have got hope that without any color or gender or race, all women need to be liberated, because before the eyes of the Lord, we are all equal and we are all important. So with these few remarks, you are warmly welcome. Fill in the meeting. I'm inviting your constructive ideas. Let's ride on. Yes, here is COVID-19. It is not for the first time that the world experienced such crisis. It happened in 1918 with the Spanish flu. But because we are God's children, we will survive. And I want to say, comrade, honorable members, fellow colleagues, let's mourn with the families who have lost their lives. We know that even in Parliament, both in the NCOP and NA, we have lost some comrades in our respective organization. So this is not a good thing. My humble appeal is that let's try to do awareness to our communities to make sure that we respect those regulations. It is for the benefit of all of us, because this monster is continue killing. Last night I have learned of one of our veterans who's also a leader in the province who has died. It takes you quickly and it doesn't give you any space to can deal with it. So let's try to adhere to the regulations. Let's do awareness. It kills, it doesn't care. It takes a youth, it takes old, it takes rich people, it takes poor people. So let's humble ourselves before God. Let's try to be more united as South Africa than before. Honorable members, you are warmly welcome. Item 2 will be apologies. I will invite our secretary to give us any apologies if there are any, and to give us also the credentials. We need to know how many are we in this platform. Thank you. King?
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. The apologies that I have received, it is the apology from the ministry, both the minister and the deputy minister will not be able to join the meeting. And then from other members, I haven't received any. The only thing Miss Honorable Lu Bengo indicated that they are having a load shedding, which might happen that she can get cut, but will proceed. We noted that. So those are the apologies, Chairperson, that I received today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honorable members. Here are the apology. The apology is only from Honorable Lubengo, who will be experiencing issues of load shedding, and we can't avoid that, but we respect that all members are in. Then the next item will be presentation. The first presentation will come from Cooperative Bank Development Agency. I've already welcomed you, our guest. Would like to hear from you. As in my remarks, I've indicated that our interest is to see our SMEs growing. This committee, we are united on that particular matter. We don't want to see our entrepreneurs or our SMEs dying. We want to see them surviving, because the issue of poverty, inequality, and unemployment is rife. And the COVID-19, as I've indicated, has disrupted us. But we believe in you. Can you take us through, please?
Thank you, Chairperson. My name's David de Jong. I'm the acting MD of the Co-operative Banks Development Agency. I've been seconded for a short period to assist until they get a full-time MD. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I think we don't talk to small business development enough about our programs and what we're doing and how we can possibly link to the broader programs of small business development. Your initial request to us in terms of this discussion was a briefing on the integration of programs with the Department of Small Business Development, but we don't actually have any direct relationship in that regard. So we were not able to talk directly to our integration into programs of small business development. But I think there are some ideas of how we can do that going forward. More particularly, we'd like to see one financial cooperative or cooperative bank in every single district. I mean, we'd like to see some type of campaign like that throughout the country, where we all promote that every single local area has their own local bank. But we'll go into that as we go forward. So the structure of this particular presentation then is on assisting cooperative financial institutions and cooperative banks and the role that the CBDA plays in that regard. We did circulate the presentation. Notwithstanding, I'm going to talk to it. Broadly, our mandate was established to promote and advance social and economic welfare of South Africans and access to banking services. The functions of the CBDA is to promote, support, and develop cooperative banking and promote the establishment of representative bodies and support organizations. We're also responsible for registering representative bodies, accrediting them, and we also interact with other regulatory authorities around the regulation of cooperative banking and of CFIs. We have a very, very close relationship with the FSCA and even a closer relationship with the Prudential Authority. So I see there's a request to put the presentation on the screen. Am I being requested to put it on, or will the organizer do that? Sorry, Chairperson.
King, who must assist, you or Sbu? Do we have the presentation? Okay. There we are.
So other parts of our mandate as well is to provide support, financial support to cooperative banks and manage a fund. There was initially in the Act that the CBDA would be responsible for a cooperative bank's deposit insurance fund. However, that's been overtaken now by a national cooperative, by a national deposit insurance fund. Having said that, the cooperative financial institutions in phase one are excluded in it. And then also to facilitate, promote, and fund education and training. And then finally, that we should actually consult with SACWA and look at ensuring that the modules and the courses that we develop are aligned to unit standards. I'm on the next two slides. I'm on the slide on vision and mission. If you could just go forward by two. Thank you. So the vision of the CBDA, sorry, one back. One back. Thanks. So the vision of the CBDA is to facilitate financial inclusion through economic transformation by ensuring sustainable cooperative banking sector. And then our mission is to create an enabling environment for the cooperative banking sector through innovative solutions. And the one that we focus on primarily is capacity building, and then also funding and technology interventions. So we provide support to cooperative banking institutions for the benefit of financial inclusion and underserved communities in South Africa. So this particular slide is the slide to talk to. How are we doing? Currently, we have 27 cooperative banking institutions. Of those 27, 4 are registered cooperative banks, and the other 23 are registered cooperative financial institutions. You might ask, what's the difference between a cooperative bank and a cooperative financial institution? A cooperative financial institution is really a cooperative bank, but in its formation stages. So it's registers with 200 members and 100,000 Rand in deposits, and it starts the process of developing itself into a cooperative bank. In the initial or in its formative stages, while it's a CFI, it gets some regulatory forbearance in terms of requirements, in terms of returns, in terms of risk management processes. So it's made easier for a CFI, but ultimately CFIs must grow into cooperative banks. That's the aim here. It's not to build a CFI sector per se, rather to build a cooperative banking sector. Currently, the CFIs in South Africa have over 30,000 members. They've issued around 260 million in loans. They've mobilized amongst themselves, the members, around 340 million in deposits, and they hold a total asset size of around 420 million. About 3 or 4 years ago, the CBDA set forward a 2020 document, and in fact, its target for total assets was 450 million. However, where we fell very, very short is in the membership. So membership has not grown in the way we've expected inside the cooperatives themselves. However, what we have seen is the deposits growing, and we think that's also partly due to the fact that CFIs are being well regulated at the moment, and it creates confidence. But what we'd like to see is more members joining the cooperatives. Our cooperatives are relatively sound. They have over 33 million in capital at the moment, which is above what we call the prudential norm of around 10% for cooperative financial institutions. So we're relatively happy about that. We only have one representative body registered in the country. It's called the National Association of Cooperative Financial Institutions of South Africa. We've had one application as a support organization, which is currently under review. The next slide, sorry, one up, please. Sorry, one slide up, please. So the next slide really just talks to the fact that we are seeing growth. We saw a 10% growth in membership, or just below 9% growth in membership. Loans are growing by 7%, deposits by 15%, assets by around 13%, and capital grew by about 6%. I should also maybe just give a little bit of a background about what we've seen during COVID. What we've noticed during COVID is that the deposits in the CFIs and the cooperative banks has been relatively stable. In fact, we've seen a little bit of growth in deposits. But what we have noticed is that loans, there's been a lot less loan demand for loans, which has surprised us a bit. This, of course, affects the cooperative banking institutions in that they rely on the loans to generate income for themselves. And delinquency has picked up a little bit as well inside the CFIs. We think it will pick up more going forward, that's delinquency. And we're hoping now with the lockdown having been lifted that we start seeing loan demand pick up again. Now that's just an overview of the sector. In terms of the products and services that we deliver, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Nomadelo Sali, who's the Director of Capacity Building in the CBDA. Nomadelo.
Good morning. Good morning. The next slide talks about the services that are as they say, in terms of I don't see the next slide that talks.
Sorry, can we move on to the next slide? Nomadelo, you'll need to speak up as well. We can't hear you, so.
Checking my volume, it's on 100.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. No, one slide up, please. I don't know why I see it.
Slide number 8.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. So in the capacity building unit, we assist CFIs, potential institutions that want to register as cooperative banking institutions. When I talk about cooperative banking institutions, I mean the cooperative financial institutions that David has alluded to and cooperative banks. So once an institution or a community has actually decided that they want to assist, they want to form a CFI, then they approach the CBDA in terms of assistance. And the assistance that we provide there is to give them guidance in terms of what is a cooperative banking institution, what is the model all about, and what is the legal framework that governs the cooperative banking sector. And then we tell them about the requirements in terms of the prudential authority, because this is a heavily regulated sector by the Reserve Bank within the arm of the prudential authority. Now, we move forward with institutions that have met the minimum requirements, also mentioned by David, of 200 members and 100,000 in share capital. So once a group have met those requirements, as well as a common bond could be maybe a geographical area or an association or an employer that wants to assist its employees to start a CFR. And then we'll go through with that process until they are at a stage where they are ready to submit their application to the Reserve Bank or the Prudential Authority. Once they are registered, we then move them to operationalization. We are required to operationalize an institution within 6 months of their registration by the Prudential Authority. In this case, because most of these institutions are run by the board of directors, and the board of directors are elected from the communities or that common bond that they have chosen for them to be registered as such an institution. Once they are registered, we then work with the board of directors so that we can inform them or share the knowledge in terms of what is expected of them as board of directors in terms of their oversight functions, as well as making sure that the CFI is run efficiently. So we provide them with a co-op bank in a box that is the modules inside the bank where a CFI knows what to do when they start operations in the morning until closing time when they are supposed to do their reconciliations. So this is an intense program because we have found out that some of the people that are running CFIs have never run a bank before, so, or even a small business for that matter. So that's why we have to go in depth in terms of how is a bank run on a daily basis, So that is what operationalization is all about. So, and then after that, we move to technical assistance, because as they are now trading, these institutions, as they are now trading, they meet problems along the way. For instance, in terms of capital, in terms of capitalization and other things. So we then bring in our technical analysts to work with them very closely in terms of providing that technical assistance. So that is what we do in terms of the technical assistance and operationalization of CFIs. And then we've got the other unit that talks to organizational development, whereby we provide training now. It could be training that they have requested themselves, the CFIs, or it could be training that we know that they would require as they are running their business. This talks to financial management. It also talks to governance for board of directors. It talks to supervisory committee for the audit committee of the CFI. Again, this comes from the community, and they need to, they are called the watchdog of the CFI to ensure that the board of directors, the staff of the CFI are actually doing what they are supposed to do. So we provide that kind of training to the supervisory committee. So our aim is to ensure that we've got the right people, the right processes, and the technology in place for the CFIs in the communities. Slide number 10, please, which is the summary of what we have spoken about. So those, in essence, are the kind of services that we offer to our CFIs. And right now, in COVID-19, we are offering these services virtually. So, but we have seen quite a number of interventions that we have done, more than what we have been able to do when we had to travel to the provinces to offer these services on site. So I think that's where my slides end. Thank you. I will take questions from here. Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. That is all from my side.
Chairperson, you can come in.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, King, I could not evenly benefit to see the slides, but I was listening attentively. It's fine, as long as other members were able. I don't know whether other honorable members were able to see the screen. I don't know what's happening with my gadgets here. According to the program, we are supposed to hear the other presentation from COSATU. Is then that will zoom to discussion. Is it COSATU in?
Yes, Chairperson, there is Mr. Matthew Parks who will be doing the presentation.
From COSATU.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Matthews, you are invited.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Comrade Chair. And, good morning to honourable members and to colleagues and comrades. I think Mr. Kunene is going to assist me with just sharing our PowerPoint presentation. I'm just very wary of crashing the systems by sharing the presentation from my side. So I think, honourable members, let me just thank you for inviting COSATU to share our views. We're looking specifically at the 200 billion rand loan guarantee scheme that is part of the 500 billion rand economic relief package of government. And we have very strong concerns with regards to it. I think we can go to the next slide, King. Okay. So, Chair, you might find it a little bit unusual, and colleagues might ask, why is the trade union worried about pumping money into the businesses? It's not normally our forte, but Chair, we're not in a normal economic situation. Comrades, members would know that even before the lockdown, even before all of us had heard about Corona, we were already in a deep economic recession. We are now in a very serious danger of heading towards an economic depression. Before the lockdown, we had an unemployment rate of 40%, with on a daily basis thousands of workers losing their jobs across the economy, and no longer just in the private sector, but in fact, even in the state-owned enterprises as well. If you look at all the different unemployment projections, the most conservative ones are that we will lose 1 million jobs. Others estimate 3 million, 4, 5, even 7 million jobs. And comrades, this is already an economy where we have 11 million people who want to work, but who cannot find a job. And even those workers who lose their jobs, it would easily take about 2 years for them to find new jobs. So that is our context. Chair, we had supported this 200 billion rand loan guarantee scheme when the President announced it late April as part of the economic relief measures. But Chair, for us, it was part of the economic relief measures. It's not a stimulus plan. A stimulus plan would come with new money to fund, to inject into the economy, to stimulate it to grow. But Chair, in the absence of a stimulus plan, its importance becomes all that more critical. Chair, also, part of the motivation for government was to support. So part of our motivation for supporting this, Chair, was to assist employers to prevent them from closing the doors and collapsing, to avoid them retrenching workers and breaking that relationship with workers, and as well as part of our efforts to rebuild the economy, to save the economy, etc. Chair. Next slide. Chair, just a little bit of kind of taking us a few steps backwards. Members will remember that the scheme was launched on.
Yes.
I think there's another colleague who's not on mute. Honorable Chair.
Can we all mute our gadgets, please? It's disrupting the speaker, please.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. So, Honorable Chair, the scheme was launched, as members would know, on the 12th of May. It is the largest part of the economic relief package. It's about 40% of it. Chair, we've had regular meetings between COSATU. Sorry, Chair, I was muted accidentally. So Chair, look, the scheme was launched the 12th of May. We've had a lot of engagements at NEDLAC between COSATU, the other trade union federations, between the Banking Association and Treasury and businesses. And just a few stats which are quite worrying. And these stats are those that have been shared with us by the Banking Association. At the 25th of July, sorry, not June, 25th of July, they had dispersed 12.8 billion rand. That is less than 6% of the total 200 billion rand promised. A month later, on the 18th of August, that amount only increased by 380 million rand in a month. So we're now at about 13.26 billion rand that has been dispersed. So about 6.5% of the total scheme has been committed to, which is very worrying, Chair, that 3 months down the road, we're at 6.5%. Next slide. So, Chair, and again, these are stats from the Banking Association, which we'll be happy to share with colleagues. They've received about 37,000 applications. 37% of them, they told us, are still being assessed. Only 26%, so a quarter, have been approved. 10% were immediately rejected for not meeting the Treasury or the Reserve Bank eligibility criteria. And then an additional 27% have been declined because of the bank's own risk criteria. So basically, Chair, we are in a serious crisis. Chair, so Chair, just some of our concerns around it. One is that we have to emphasize this is one of the few injections into the economy in the absence of a stimulus plan. The economic relief package, Chair, just to unpack it a little bit for members, but I'm sure they'll be very aware of it. It includes 40 billion rand from the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Again, Chair, that is not government's money. That is workers' deferred wages, as workers' contributions. Members will be aware that government doesn't contribute a single cent to the UIF. That money has gone into the economy to assist with workers' salaries and to help keep the relationship between workers and businesses, to avoid retrenchments. Chair, the banks have provided about 40 billion rand of temporary relief in the form of loan payment deferrals, but that's not new money, that's just a temporary delay in payments. There is the much talked about 70 billion rand loan from the IMF, which must still come. The only other money which is there is the 150 billion rand within the budget, but that is not new money, Chair. That's shifting of existing funds within the budget. And often taking money away from the economic cluster departments, including the small business department. Then, Chair, there's a 200 billion rand loan guarantee, of which we've seen, Chair, only 6.5% has come out. So in essence, Chair, the only new money which has actually come into the economy so far during this past few months is the UF money. The other money is not new money, it's a shifting of money or it hasn't come through yet. Next slide, Chair. So, Chair, look, we think as COSATU, we basically have two options. We can continue on the trajectory we are right now. We don't believe that scheme will even reach 25 billion rand at this rate. You can see there's very little appetite from businesses to apply for it. And those that are applied, most of them are being turned away. Chair, we feel that if we continue on this trajectory without a stimulus plan, without unlocking this money, we are going to enter into economic depression, and we must not be surprised when unemployment hits 60%. And then we're going to take at least a decade to pick up the pieces, and it's going to be a very painful process. And that will also come and hit the state further. Chair, option two for us, which is the only option, is that we need to have a decisive intervention by the highest leadership of government, including the president. We have raised this with the president at NEDLAC last week. There has to be serious introspection by Treasury and the banks, and they have to deal with the excessively strict criteria. They need to overhaul it, and they need to find ways of ramping it up to make sure all businesses are aware of it and to encourage them to apply. Chair, for us, this is a critical intervention to stave off a depression and to help stimulate the economy and to keep businesses afloat, including small businesses in particular. So, Chair, a few proposals from our side, and these are proposals we've been raising with government, which also some of the businesses which have applied for this loans have raised with us. One is that currently Treasury is demanding that the first 6% of the risks or the losses from any applicants, the first 6%, in other words, 6 billion rand, 12 billion rand, would be losses that would be incurred by banks in case businesses default. Chair, we hear government's arguments that the banks will also take some of the risk. That's fine. Again, Chair, we're not in a normal economic scenario. It is clearly a problem with this scheme.
You are muted again. Can you unmute?
Chair, can you hear me?
We can't hear you, Matthews. Please
Chair,
unmute. Hello?
Yes, can you hear me
Can
now,
you hear
Chair?
me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm not
Can
on mute.
you
Can you
hear
hear me,
me?
Chair? Yes, I can hear you.
Unmute, please.
I'm not on mute, Chairperson.
Chairperson, I can hear him. Maybe there's something wrong with your digit.
Hello, Kruger. Honorable Kruger, what are you saying?
I'm saying I can hear him very clearly and loudly. I say maybe there's something wrong with your
With my
digit.
gadget, ne?
Yeah, with your gadget. Maybe we must just ask the committee secretary if everything is all right at his side.
Okay.
Matthews, can you proceed, please?
Sure. I hope you can hear me,
For the
Honorable
benefit of the
Chairperson.
committee.
Sure. No, thank you. So, Chair, look, our first proposal is basically that we don't have time for nitpicking between government, between Treasury and the banks. We need to ramp up this thing urgently. This is far bigger than Treasury or banks. It's about saving the economy. It's about saving workers' jobs. It's about keeping businesses open. So our first proposal is that Treasury should simply stand surety for 100% of the loan scheme. We can discuss later on about revising that with the banks, but right now we need to remove any excuse from the banks to be excessively conservative in the lending criteria. Chair, we would want to also propose that this loan scheme should provide cash flows upfront to applicants to get money into the streams, to keep them open, because many of them are literally collapsing left and right. We need to, Chair, for the banks to reduce the interest rate that they charge to loans. The Reserve Bank, we feel, has during this period come to the party by significantly slashing the repo rate, but the banks need to go even further beyond that, Chairperson. There's no point of profiteering in a stagnant economy. Next slide. Chair, we think that the loan scheme criteria for what purposes the funds can be used for needs to be expanded. Businesses should be allowed to use it for salaries. Salaries in any workplace are the largest expenditure item by their nature, and it's important for companies to have money to pay workers' salaries. Chair, we think we need to allow applicants to use the loans to restructure existing debt to help lessen the burdens, to make it more affordable. We can't understand why we'd want not to allow them to do that. Chair, we also are very keen not to overburden companies, especially emerging businesses, small businesses with excessive and unsustainable levels of debt. We know that many of our companies have dangerous levels of debt. We need to avoid that. So we are quite keen also, Chair, to link this issue to job creation. We think that we should have a hybrid approach, that you're required when you apply for the loan. Let's just go back to the slide for a second, Panani. When you apply for the loan, Chair, that you are required to use it to save jobs. And then we also convert part of it to grants and to equity to incentivize creating jobs, Chairperson. We can create jobs, we can grow the economy. But we think, Chair, we need to get the right balance so we don't overburden employers with massive levels of debt. And that is one of the reasons why many of them are refusing to apply, because they're wary of taking on too much debt. But we need to link it to the issue of job creation and preservation. Chair, we also think that the big five banks are not taking this scheme seriously enough. We need to utilize the state development of finance institutions and the various forms of state banks, whether it's the IDC, the DBSA, the various small lending agencies. We need to involve them, because the point is, Chair, is to get the money into the economy, to keep businesses afloat and to keep jobs saved. I think the last proposal, Chair, was really, this is not a normal government program. We are in the worst economic crisis in 100 years. Literally millions of workers' jobs depend upon our interventions. We think that there is a need for Treasury and for the big five commercial banks, not just the banking associations, but the actual banks, to report fortnightly to Parliament. This, Chairperson, is something we have raised with the Finance and Appropriations Committees in the two houses of Parliament. We think they have some appetite for it. But we think, Chair, there's a need for the Treasury and the banks to report fortnightly about the rollout of this scheme, so the Parliament is able to hold them to account. We can make sure it is a success, and we can save workers' jobs. Next slide. So in conclusion, Chair, we feel we are in a serious danger zone right now. The way we're going right now, this scheme is not going to take off. We are going to see thousands of additional companies collapsing. We are going to see millions of workers' jobs being lost, especially in the small business sector. This is also going to mean further losses in tax revenue to the state, which will have a cascading effect on the economy. Chair, we are in the struggle of our lifetime economically. We have to move out of the recession. We have to avoid an economic depression. We have to stimulate the economy. So, Chair, this must be one of the most critical interventions by the state. Treasury and the banks have to come to the party. We don't think that Parliament should be soft on this approach. They must really hold them to account and force them to intervene. So I think, Chair, really, we don't have the luxury of time. Workers' jobs are hanging on the line. There is a need for political will. And if we don't do this, Chairperson, then we must not be surprised by Christmas that we are in an economic depression. But let me stop there, Honourable Chair, members, and thank you for giving us space. And hopefully our contributions would have assisted members. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Matthews. Thanks to all presenters. It's quite touching. I'm really touched, but I'm happy if we still have got people like your good selves who are trying their best, that we need to defend the country. Honorable members, we had them. Mine is to drive this vehicle. I will give summary at the end. I will now invite you to engage with the two presentations. I will see by raise of hands. King, you will assist me to identify hands so that I can list them properly, so that we engage. But I'm telling you, this is touching, more especially on the issue of 3 months. We have only utilized 6% while people are in their need. We really appreciate this presentation. I believe as a portfolio committee jointly together, we'll try our best that we push this issue so that it becomes a reality. We don't want to see people losing jobs. Honorable members, over to you. First speaker.
Chairperson, I've seen the hand of Honorable Kruger.
Yes. Okay. It's only Honorable Kruger wants to speak on this matter. I think this matter is a burning issue. This is the right platform, whereas the portfolio committee who has got mandate to hold a government accountable to do the right thing.
Chairperson, I'm also here, Honorable Mbele, and I think Honorable Jacobs also has his hand up.
Honorable Mbele. And whose hand is up again? Assist me because I have got a problem with the gadget.
It's Mr. Jacobs.
Mr. Jacobs, okay. Thanks. Any other member? Okay. These are the only members I have recognized for now. Honorable Kruger, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the informative presentations. Chair, my first point is just a comment, and not as much to COSATU and to the other presentation, but to the committee itself. Chair, you will remember that since this guarantee scheme was launched by government and the commercial banks, we actually were very concerned as a committee about the way they're doing business. And we asked, I know for a fact that I asked for about 4 times in 4 different meetings to have the Bank Council here on this platform so that we can discuss this matter with them. And I'm very surprised and actually disappointed that we have to speak to COSATU first before we speak to the Bank Council, because it's not. I hear what COSATU say, and I hear what Mr. Matthews say, but the problem is not lying with the workers. The problem is lying with the banks. It's not the government. It's the banks. It's not the workers, it's the banks. It's not the business, it's the banks. So we need to see, and we need to bring those Bank Council or the banks to this committee and discuss the problems with them so that we as a committee can get first-hand information from them and why are the statistics as it is. Because it's very cumbersome. It seems like the banks are washing their hands in Afrikaans sê hulle was hulle hande in onskuld. En it's net God's water oor God's akker. They don't care. And I mean, to carry in this difficult times, which South Africa is in, and to carry a 6% risk, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, we all bank with some of these banks, and we all know how much it costs us to bank with them. So banks are enormous business. They charge enormous fees, and I don't see why the banks is not coming to the party. That's my first point. And I want to request again, Madam Chair, if we can have this Bank Council on this platform like in yesterday, it will be appreciated. Now, my first question, my only question to COSATU is, if to Mr. Matthew is, did they work out what will the total of this million job losses that they anticipated? What is this total salary bill for this 1 million employees per annum? I wonder if they made a calculation like this. How much salary will 1 million employees lose from small businesses if we don't change the situation as it is at the moment? Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my question.
Thank you, Honorable Kruger. Honorable Mbele, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the presentations, and good morning to all the colleagues. I have two questions, please, for Mr. De Jong and his colleague at the CBDA. The first is if they could please just unpack and give us some analysis, if they've done it, and have feedback on his comments that there was a decline in the demand for loans during the lockdown period. I think he made the comment that it was surprising. It was for me too, because one would think that during a time of difficulty in businesses being able to operate, there would be higher demand for that kind of lifeline credit extension assistance in order to keep them afloat and just sort of deal with the revenue declines. So if they have any insights into why that observation has been made, that might be useful to help us understand. And then my second question might be slightly unfair, given that the CBDA is really primarily focused on the financial or funding aspects of the cooperative space. But it's a long-standing, or it comes from a long-standing sort of concern of mine that the form and the approach of using co-ops as business vehicles or as economic opportunity vehicles has historically tended to be overlooked. I think there's a sort of narrow perception and possibly a sort of negative perception that co-ops are really only for the agricultural sector. You know, you only form an agri co-op, or possibly a co-op in terms of making and selling arts and crafts and those sorts of things, but not a co-op as a business structure, as a business vehicle in other sectors. Are they involved in any work to sort of change that perception, to kind of raise awareness about how co-ops could add value in being adopted as a model in other sectors? Because if there is funding assistance available through the CFIs and the CBIs, but we don't have the number or the critical mass of actual co-ops that can tap into that, then there could be a mismatch and a missed opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Mbele. The next speaker is Honorable Jacobs.
Thank you, Chair. Let me first acknowledge and welcome the two presentations. I think the presentation on cooperative banks is really informative, and as a committee, I was surprised to see what the work they're doing. It's something that we must encourage. You know, cooperative development is a key thing, and we need to encourage that. You see, communities must be allowed to come together. Stokvels are already there, and we need to look at formalizing it. So I would welcome that. We need to market it more. And Mr. De Jong, if the banks, I'm just saying this in jest, if the banks are not prepared to help bank our people in our communities, maybe we should divert some of the funds to your agency so that you can help the unbankable, the communities, the rural areas. So I'm just saying that as a question. Do you have the capacity to do that? And I would certainly from the portfolio side welcome this and encourage more awareness and how to apply and get people set up so that cooperatives is an opportunity, alternative economic model that we want to encourage. So just a comment and also a question on the cooperative. Then coming to the COSATU submission, I think, Chairperson, I want to welcome our President and the national government's foresight in announcing the 200 billion rand loan guarantee scheme. It is a very responsive, it's a very progressive call from our government to say that yes, we have the pandemic, but we're going to use the money and the loan in a way that we use productive. Instead of making South Africans just consumers, we need to produce and get ourselves through creating jobs, through entrepreneurship, creating opportunities for our people. But I think it is a big challenge, and we seldom agree, but on this one, I want to agree with my colleague from the DA. This committee did ask for the Banking Association of South Africa to come and account and make submissions. I want to put it on record formally that this portfolio committee must ask them, encourage them to our next session to come and make a submission, because it's unacceptable as South Africans that there's so much money available and the banks are not making that money available. You see, we need the banks to transform and also to see how they can make loans available to those that have the idea but don't have the surety. Now, that auntie or that gogo or that selling the pet cook or selling or the garage or the welder or the baker or all of the small people, they have ideas, they are productive, but they don't have surety like a house, they don't have big assets, and we can't use the banks in their lending criteria can't not give them the opportunity. So we'd want a breakdown from banks to say, how many of these, how is this money, this 200 billion rand, going to help us rebuild our economy? And we want to see a breakdown in geographical areas, in rural, in townships, in villages, in gender, in race. It must cover all of us as South Africans, because here is we need to spend ourselves out of this crisis. So we welcome the presentation by COSATU. I certainly welcome the suggestions that they have made. A lot of important, critical suggestions that they've made. We must also, maybe at the next presentation, call on National Treasury to come and make a presentation, because there is a relationship between National Treasury, the Reserve Bank, the South African Reserve Bank, that makes this money available to the retail banks, the big 5 banks, and they in turn then make the banks available. We also need to look at that money is too much for the development for the commercial banks to spend. So some of that money must go to development agencies, financial development agencies, that is focused on intermediary finance for communities and for small business. So I think for me, it's just not a question, but we support the recommendations of COSATU. We need to get the other banking association to come in, and we need to look at the lending criteria so that it make it more easy. I also agree that we shouldn't give free money available. If you have a business idea and you can employ people, we need to give South Africans an opportunity, all South Africans an opportunity. So this is an urgent thing. I think we need to, as a committee, continue monitoring this. As the Parliament, we have oversight. In this case, the banks have to come to Parliament and be accountable. So we support the suggestions that COSATU made, because the money must be used for productive use of our economy and for creating and protecting current jobs. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Chairperson, it's King.
Yes,
Chairperson,
King.
Yeah, there was a hand from Mr. Langa.
Okay. Mr. Langa, can you come in, please? Mr. Langa, the stage is yours.
Okay, I'm just struggling with my laptop here. But greetings, everyone. The chairperson, the agency, and the delegation from COSATU and colleagues. My one is just going to be short, colleagues, and it is just an emphasis as well on what Honorable Kruger and Honorable Faisal had alluded on, because I was also taken back when I saw CBDA, which is a bank development agency, and COSATU, which is a workers' trade union federation, here before us today, instead of having had the Bank Association of South Africa first to deliberate on business and business finance and banking. I will also then urge the department to, as quickly as they can, or as soon as they can, to invite the Bank Association of South Africa, because we need to deliberate on these business banking and finance issues first, and then we can be inviting the likes of the CBDA and be getting the perspectives of your federations. But after having had, or after having dealt with the issues with the banking of South Africa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks, Honorable Langa. Once more, our colleague, our condolences on your loss as the committee. Here we're working as a team, we are brothers and sisters. Your happiness is our happiness, your sadness is our happiness. We believe God will give you strength, my son. It's not easy to lose a mom, but we really we are going to support you throughout during this difficult period. You must not be ashamed to share with us. May God give you strength so that you don't lose focus onto your job. Thank you, honorable. Thank you, honorable members. I will now request or invite the two presenters. Mostly they were just comments, but if I heard Mr. Mbele well, he posed a question to the cooperatives, to the first presentation, which is our cooperative bank development. Myself, I don't have questions. I will give remarks at the end. Can you respond to those questions?
Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you, Chairperson. On the question of our observation about the savings being very steady and less loan demand, we believe that up to now, up to this point of the lifting of the up to the level 2, the primary reason why we haven't seen higher loan demand has probably been because of uncertainty and people reluctant to take on additional debt if they're not able to pay it off. So, that's what we think it is. We think now that that the economy has been reopened, we actually think we're going to see a lot more loan demand for people to restart their businesses and to start putting more money into their small businesses to get going. So unfortunately, we don't, what happened was when the lockdown happened, we started phoning all of our CFIs to touch base with them to get a sense of what was happening. We were initially very scared that there was going to be large withdrawals from the cooperatives. So that was our big concern initially, that there was going to be runs on the money. But in fact, we didn't find that at all. And perhaps again, 3 months is a long time, but people have been able to weather the storm. So perhaps it's also why we didn't see huge withdrawals, but we didn't see big withdrawals. And initially we were very concerned about liquidity, but it didn't turn out that way. The Prudential Authority as well, immediately afterwards, also provided some regulatory relief for financial cooperatives in case. And financial cooperatives have had access to this fund, which we're talking about at the moment, but even the financial cooperatives themselves are not taking advantage of it, which again is very interesting. A number of them initially said they were going to apply, but then opted not to. I think some of the issues around the conditions being lightened will also assist with their decision making, because they were told they need to apply to this fund for their members to be able to benefit from it. So I think the second question was, should we use the cooperative banks and the CFIs to be getting more money out? We'd love that. Unfortunately, the capacity of our cooperative banks and CFIs at the moment is relatively limited. We are in discussions at the moment with CIFA, and CIFA and ourselves are looking at creating a fund for enterprise development and for on-lending. So we think with that particular fund, we'll be able to get more enterprise development loans through the cooperatives. We are still at the formative stages of this discussion, but it is a good discussion which is happening. How does the CBDA assist with the development of cooperatives more broadly? I must say that the cooperative sector in itself is relatively disorganized, if I can put it that way rather. I mean, we really do believe in the economic democracy model. I think all of us would want to see cooperatives more broadly take a more central role in our economy as an alternative to this vulturism which we're seeing at the moment, and rather have communities taking an active part in owning and controlling their own institutions. We personally would like to actually see leadership, yourselves, talking more about this, because we believe that if the right message is coming forward as well around cooperatives, there'll be a better take-up of them. Not simply to register a cooperative to be able to get a tender, but in fact to register a cooperative to stimulate economic activity in your area where you're not getting it. So we really would like to hear more about cooperatives, and then cooperative banks and cooperative financial institutions will form part of the value chain of that particular ecosystem. Hence, I was earlier also saying, one of the things we'd like to see is cooperative financial institutions and cooperative banks part of some type of initiative where we try and actually create a localized cooperative financial institution in every single district. So every single town should have their own financial cooperative where they mobilize funds, they give members loans, and stimulate economic development within those particular communities. Because that's the beauty of the model. The money circulates within the community that does the savings. So we would like to see that, and we really would be encouraged if the committee also took an active role in promoting cooperatives as an alternative. I believe I have answered all the questions. Thanks.
Madam Chair, can I just say something quickly, if I'm allowed?
Yeah, you are allowed, sir.
Madam Chair, yeah, Madam Chair, to say they want to hear more from cooperatives. I think it's a total wrong strategy. I think cooperatives must hear more from them, and that is the biggest problem. Cooperatives in the rural areas don't know there's a cooperative bank. I just went onto their website. I can promise you I won't be able to apply for a loan on their website. So while we were in lockdown, I mean, how would people apply for loans or financial assistance if everybody was in lockdown? So my point is, they don't want to hear more of cooperatives. Cooperatives must hear more from them, from the bank. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. At the same time, although I'm still going to do my closing remarks. I think as the portfolio committee, as public reps, it's also our responsibility to join hands with them, hence this presentation, because indeed vulnerable people from rural areas might not have that knowledge and might not have such a technology to can access. You are totally right, Honorable Croker. We are their advocates. It's ourselves together with the cooperative bank development to make sure that things are happening. I was still coming to that to just check with them because they have spoken about the CFIs which they are doing training, etc., or they're indicating that the area is geographical area. I believe we'll have interest, even not now, to get information from them so that we see how far have they been on the ground and how many across the board have benefited or how many are aware about this program. I think that should be our responsibility so that we can be able to drive this vehicle moving forward. I would invite COSATU to respond if ever there were issues, Matthews, which were related to your good selves, but I had members uploading your proposal. At the same time, some were questioning why you first as a federation, not the banks. I believe it will be for another discussion in another day, but we really appreciate their initiative. COSATU?
Sure. No, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to the members. I think as Honorable Jacobs is saying, this is much bigger than the color of our T-shirts, our ideological or political tendencies. It's about saving the nation, saving jobs, saving the economy, in the most difficult challenge in a century. So I think to Honorable Kruger and even to Honorable Langer and I think Honorable Jacobs, we would agree completely. That's part of our proposal we've raised to the finance committees, to the appropriations committees, and now to yourselves, is for Parliament, whether at a portfolio level or at a joint ad hoc committee approach, call the banks, the Banking Association, National Treasury, to hold them to account. This is too big a crisis, Chair, to simply wait for the October medium-term budget policy statement. Literally, workers' lives and jobs are dependent upon it. I think, Chair, we would suggest that not only calling the Banking Association, but in fact, each of the big 5 banks, call the CEOs, because really they're the ones with the power. They're the ones who can reduce the lending criteria, who can make sure this pumps out. And Chair, look, this is not about whether you are a member of the ANC or DA or COSATU. It's irrelevant. It's about saving the economy. The banks and National Treasury have to come to the party. They have to show solidarity to consumers, to workers, to businesses, to the economic sectors. If we don't do it, we're facing an economic depression. I think, Chair, to Honorable Kruger, what is the consequence of losing 1 million jobs? And again, it's not just an abstract number. It's 1 million breadwinners. It's 1 million families. These are fathers and mothers. They have children. So there's immediate cascading effect if someone loses their job. How do they buy food for their children? How do they buy electricity? How do they pay for transport to get the kids to school? All of that. A very narrow cost would be if we take, for example, annual income average of about 271,000, which the BCA, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, would roughly set it at. So that's an immediate 271 billion rand lost in terms of wages. But it doesn't just stop there, because obviously when a person has a salary, they buy food, they buy clothing, electricity. And a quick calculation would take us to about a 423 billion rand loss to the gross domestic product of the economy. Again, something we can't afford. But beyond that, Chair, beyond the sufferings of the families, who will overwhelmingly be African and colored, will be women, etc., is the loss to taxes to the state in form of company tax, income tax, VAT, which has a collapse of the state capacity to deliver public services to the poor. It means more persons queue up for social grants from the state when the state doesn't have money. It means that poverty and inequality indexes rise even further, and we're already the world champion in terms of that challenge. And of course, Chair, if a worker doesn't have money, they can't buy. So it suppresses economic demand. and it further compounds the economic crisis. So there's a whole multiplicity of challenges, Chair. And that is why, Chair, as COSATU, we've been pushing and harassing the Ministry and Department of Labor and the UIF to pump in the UIF money into the economy, because we really need to take everything we have, including the kitchen sink, and throw it at the economy. We simply can't afford to pontificate and to take a back seat. I think Honorable Jacobs, Chair, I would agree with him 200%. We need to squeeze the banks and the Treasury by the lending criteria. They must really reduce the criteria massively. Banks will always make a profit, and they've made obscene profits, as Honorable Kruger is saying, of all of us. The bank charges they charge are far and above. And if we don't want if we doubt that, Chair, each of the big four banks has retrenched on average 2,000 workers in the past few years. Bank cashiers. They've closed many branches in rural areas, in townships, etc. Those cashiers on average earn about 300 Rand every day. They're mostly women, African and colored. The CEOs of the big five banks, each of them earns 150,000 Rand every single day. They've got the money. They need to show a bit of patriotic consciousness. They need to show solidarity to South Africa, and they need to come to the party. Their money is not their personal money. It's all of our bank fees. It's the money of the PIC, which is workers' money. It belongs to the country. They need to show solidarity, Chair. The alternative is, if they don't do it, and if we don't squeeze them, we will see thousands of businesses collapsing, as we're seeing. The banks will see loan default, because if you're unemployed, if your company closes, you can't pay your loans. So it's in their own interest. You will see a depressed demand in the economy, which will compound the bank's ability to lend in the future. Chair, look, we're not saying we believe in a corporate welfare state as COSATU, but we're not in a normal scenario. We have to pump in money. And so it's a bit of an unusual situation for COSATU to say pump in money to businesses, but we have to do it because our members' jobs depend on it. But look, Chair, it's not just us who are saying it. This is what the US has done under President Obama, what they've done under the current President Trump. It's what the European Union is doing, it's what China and Russia are doing, and to a positive effect. When they know they go into a depression or a recession, they pump in money to stimulate it, and they will recover that money through revenues to the state afterwards, through jobs, etc. So I think, Chair, let me just conclude by thanking honorable members for inviting COSATU. Our vantage point is always to save workers' jobs, and the economy is linked to that. We hope we've assisted you, and we'll be very keen to see yourselves and the sister committees in the finance and appropriations squeezing Treasury, squeezing the banks, because really this is about saving South Africa right now. We all have to put shoulder to the wheelchair. But thank you, members.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthews. Thanks to honorable members, all of you. Honorable members, I think we're at the right track during the right time. This COVID-19 is a wake-up call to us all. I'm happy with one voice, all of us who are saying we need the big five to come and present before us, and of which is a unanimous decision of this committee. Again, we are saying treasurer, national treasurer, must make sure that fortnightly he come to us and give us developments, because we don't want plans, but ourselves, we monitor government. We call it doing oversight. So to do oversight on this department, they must come and account before us. Again, honorable members, you are saying you support proposal by COSATU, and of which I would also want to say that we support COSATU's proposals, and also appreciate the engagements between cooperative bank development and CIFA and CEDA. Would like to hear from you, because indeed this department of ours, which is called small business development, cannot carry the burden which we are faced as the country. Also to appreciate what Honorable Mbele has indicated, that cooperatives should not relate to agriculture only. it should cut across. And that's what we are saying as a portfolio committee. We want to see our people, but I will be interested as the chairperson and my team to can be furnished with information from cooperative bank development on the issues of training under the item of training CFIs. I really appreciate the initiative. It's a good one, but would like as public representative to know exactly where have you been and how far are you and which criteria are you using, with whom are you talking on the ground, because that is important. Ourselves as public representative, regardless of our different political parties, we are there on behalf of our people. You had members saying that our worrying factor is that our people are vulnerable. They are from rural areas. Again, the issue presented by COSATU as well as cooperative bank development on the rejection of applications. I think this is a song which we are singing on daily basis, that our worrying factor, there are red tapes in those banks. And if indeed we don't bring them on board as the portfolio committee, and then we shy away, we won't reach our objectives, because thousands and thousands of people are applying and they are being rejected and nothing is happening. Our interest is to see our people moving forward. We appreciate COSATU. Your call is to make sure that you defend jobs. Your call is to say that you make sure that jobs are being created. But how do you create jobs without resources? Banks must assist us. National Treasurer must assist us. Indeed, we can't wait for October. We need to zoom into the space now if we mean business. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I think as portfolio committee, we're not the same now as before these presentations. You have empowered us. We now understand what is it that COSATU is having in hand. We now understand what is it that cooperative bank development is initially doing, and what is it, what are your interests, and we really support you, so that at the end of the day, this triple challenge which is being faced by our country will be able to deal with it. Thank you so much, honorable members. I really appreciate the meeting. Stand adjourned. Bye-bye.
Chairperson?
Yes.
It's King here.
Yes, King.
I should think, Chair, if I can be just given a minute to explain the question of BASA and the Treasury.
Okay.
Yes.
You can do so.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable members, as we have seen in the program of the committee, we did send out the invitations inviting the Banking Association of South Africa and the National Treasury. The only problem that we encountered is that there was a coincidence in terms of time, whereby the Treasurer was getting the briefing on the act that is being introduced. So now, as we are starting at the time slot for our meeting was starting at 9 to 12, so they're also getting that briefing. So now, when we're trying to juggle out with time, only to find out in the afternoon members will be in the house. So then we had then to defer to find a space where they can come and brief the committee as per invitation. So it was that challenge that we're facing. So they are still coming, and then the Banking Association wanted to be together with Treasury when they're making the briefings. So I just wanted to make members aware that it has been like as in the program, and it's not that they didn't accept the invitation. So in the next meeting, it will be the Treasury and the Banking Association of South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, King. Thank you, honorable members. This concludes our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your afternoon. See you in the house.
Thank you.
Thank
See you in the house, of course.
Bye bye, members.
Bye.